Welcome everyone to our product launch of DevOps Equilibrium. I'm going to try to walk you through what application we've created and why we developed it with CloudBees in mind. The context behind this is really where digital transformation happens and not so much about faster code promotions or how many that you have. We're actually looking at the talent pool and how to equalize the talent pool versus the draw of software delivery. So what we're doing within this application is evaluating the total burden that a release produces for the team that's assigned. And what we're then trying to do is tell you where you need to orchestrate, which is what we use to reduce burden within the SDLC. Generally, it's through a CI/CD provider. And what you're doing there is taking a task that's done by a person or the process that's all incongruent, putting it together so that the release is done by a service or CI/CD provider. What we're trying to achieve is increase your resilience. Lots of things happen in software delivery. You never know what's going to affect your staff. You don't want attrition. So let's jump in and explore the application. On your starting page, we need to get some metrics from you. How often are you releasing, the name of the application so you can get a report? What is the average cost of your resources so that you have an actual value of what am I wasting beyond just am I releasing on time? I might be missing my business metrics, but at the same time, you're actually hurting your talent pool that's supposed to be innovating. And then how much of that time is spent on this application? We've mocked this up. We've done this with many different customers, but in this case, there's no actual customer data here. We're just testing with test data. When you jump in, this is actually dynamic. You can add or change. This is a very common SDLC process. You got your DIT for development, your QA cycle and quality engineering, and you just go through towards production. Once you get into the application, it's going to actually try to aggregate all those tasks that you do and figure out which one of these are orchestrated and automated, or is done by hand, right? Or it's a task that has to happen because the process is inefficient. So what we're going to find out is there equilibrium from the staff working on it versus the cadence of release? And if I change that cadence, what happens to the staff? In most organizations that we've measured, you're not in equilibrium. What we mean by that is the hours allotted and the hours required to release are not in line with each other. Generally, the requirements are higher draw than the people. And what that means is people work overtime. This causes attrition. This causes people to leave organizations for a better work-life balance or work-life harmony that you're looking for. I'll skip ahead because you don't need to see all the data here. Well, I've pre-populated as mocking up common customer findings so that we can get to where the data is being compiled and assessed. So if we go to the results page, it starts with a heroics heat map. This heroics heat map gives you the breakdown of where you're spending your time on what tasks so that you know where orchestration necessities are. In this case, the most common orchestration necessity is quality assurance or quality engineering. The reason being is that's where a lot of the testing and a lot of the burden occurs, and orchestration is somewhat complex to implement it there, but it's missed. Same for production. There's usually a lot of content around production and testing and the amount of people testing in production when you have major releases. If I want to see what to do here, what we've noticed is that we're unable to meet the SDLC requirements if we consider every person working 8 hours a day, which is what we're intending to hire people for as a 40-hour work week or less. In this case, we actually almost need to double the amount of hours, meaning they would need to work almost 16 hours per day to meet the requirements of the release. And that's only if I release twice a month. What happens if the business comes and says, I need you to release weekly? We're just highlighting that there's incongruence based upon the hours we want people to work and the work needed to actually release this software. We can solve that with orchestration. In this case, it says I need 47% orchestration. From our perspective, if I orchestrate half of the QA, I'm already pretty much at the numbers I need. So you know the heat map area that needs to be solved, and we know the amount of orchestration to achieve this equilibrium or the happiness that the team needs to achieve. If you move it to resource consumption, I'm at 189% consumption of our resources. That just reflects almost a doubling of the hours required to release, which means your staff is most likely going to leave. Regardless of good management, this is unsustainable, and the resilience is quite low because we don't have any of the items that we assess to be orchestrated. So orchestrated items are resilient to change because the pace at which you release does not affect an orchestrated item, only the ad hoc items that you achieve. If you were to try to solve this by hiring, you need to hire 27 more people. At the beginning, you saw there was about 30, so you almost have to double the staff to meet the achievements here. It gets worse when you try to do this 4 times monthly. Let's say I tried to do it once a week, right? This is weekly. You can obviously switch it to weekly. But the context here is it's almost invisible to the organization, the impact it has on your talent pool, even though in the world we all know those that are capable of DevOps skills and the ability to orchestrate is in a very scarce state right now. It's very hard to find these resources. Again, now if I move it to 4 times a week, I need to increase my orchestration by 74%. It's not enough to do QA. I actually may need to do the performance environment to achieve that value. If I want to do it custom, let's say I want to do orchestration, it equalizes, it figures out how much orchestration is needed, how many licenses within context of licensing the staff to do orchestration, because look, you have to have a tool to orchestrate. But if I actually want to increase the orchestration, you'll notice innovation potential goes up. This is the last piece of the equation. DevOps flourishes with innovation potential. It's not about maintaining equilibrium. It's about finding innovation potential. So if I accelerate my adoption of orchestration, become highly resilient, I can also get innovation potential where people have self-development hours or improvement hours, where the release itself is not consuming their entirety of day-to-day work. So this is why we put it together. We're trying to stop talent heroics. We're trying to give organizations clear direction on what does orchestration and CI/CD do for you, what areas need to be targeted, and how do we make you resilient to unplanned challenges such as COVID or going completely digital. This in its end state, if you were to go to 100% orchestration, the end result is you're 100% resilient. I know this is like a state that people try to achieve, but the hours required to release is 0. So if you change the release frequency, it doesn't affect your staff. This is obviously where very mature organizations like Netflix and Twitter are headed, but it is an achievement that can be fostered, and you try to work towards 100% orchestration, where you're basically autonomous software delivery. Thank you for spending your time with us to explore application. I'm hoping that you join us as this is a component of one of our DevOps assessments. There are other things that we do to help teams figure out how to improve the SDLC architecture itself. That's also part of it, but this is one of these really unique applications that give you some support so that you make the right choices, you make a specialized SAO, and you're tactically on track to achieve your goals. Thank you for joining.